This is a screencast on Thanatopsis by William Cullen Bryant. This one's a little bit lengthier, so I decided to do a screencast just on this particular poem. And plus, I believe it just has a lot to unpack, and so I just kind of wanted to break it down a little bit more in detail. So I gave it its own screencast. So we know that William Cullen Bryant was greatly influenced by the Romantic movement. We talked about that in last week's text notes about the Romantic period and the emphasis on the nature, specifically the reverence of nature, the emphasis on nature and its healing powers and ability. And so that's one of those characteristics of the Romantic period, and that's very prevalent here in William Cullen Bryant's poetry, specifically this poem, Thanatopsis. So Thanatopsis is an elegy. It's for all mankind on death and how to prepare ourselves for death because all men die, and that we should not really fear it because all men die, and it's going to happen whether we worry about it or not. But if we do have worries about it, that communing with nature can help alleviate those worries, because nature has a lot to tell us. She is always speaking to us if we take the time to listen. So she's going to remind us of the fact that we all die, but don't be afraid, because everyone dies, and we will go back into the earth where we came from, and we are not going to be alone when that happens. So it starts off here with an address to him. So to the man, to him who in the love of nature holds communion with her visible forms, she speaks a various language. So suggesting that this man, if he loves nature and if he will take the time to go and listen, to hold communion with her, she speaks to us, and she speaks to us in a different language depending on how we feel. So at first, for his gayer hour, she has a voice of gladness and a smile and eloquence of beauty, and she glides into his darker musings. So at first, if we're happy and gay, she is happy as well. She smiles at us, and she speaks with a voice of gladness. So we have that personification that of nature as a she, which is a common poetic device. Nature as a female, and the way that she mothers, Mother Nature. She mothers all of us and soothes us when we are sad, and it communes with us and when we are happy, and so that's all where that comes from. She glides into his darker musings with a mild and gentle sympathy that steals away their sharpness ere he is aware. So when we're depressed, she glides in to those darker musings, those darker thoughts, and with sympathy, gentle comfort, and peace, she steals away their sharpness, the sharpness of our dark thoughts. Okay, so when thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit, we see the shift here. We were addressing he as in man, but he changes direction, and it's you when you start worrying about. So of the last bitter hour, which we know is death. So when our thoughts turn to death and the scary images that comes with, the shroud, which is the cloth that would be covering a dead body in olden times, how they were shrouded, corpses were shrouded with a gauzy cover kind of thing, and pall, and breathless darkness, which is scary to think about, right? The darkness of a grave and how we cannot breathe in it, and the narrow house, which is the coffin. All those things that make us shudder and grow sick at heart, she says, or Bryant says, go outside, go forth under the open sky and list to nature's teaching. Listen to what she has to say, because everything outside will speak to us. Her still voice will come from all around. The earth, the waters, the air, we hear that still voice, that calm and comforting voice. Goes on to say that it spends a good period of time talking about we're going to die, and the earth that nourished us, that fed us and gave us and caused us to grow, will claim us again. We're going to die, and it will claim us back into the earth again. That's where we get that whole idea of ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We're going to lose what made us human when we die. What that trace, that human trace that made us our own individual being. All those things that made us human are going to mix forever back into the other elements, which the rock, the tree, the everything in nature. So we're going to die, we're going to lose what made us human, because we're going to mix forever with the elements. And we're going to do that with all the other people that have died before. Thou shalt lie down with patriarchs of the infant world, with kings, the powerful of the earth, the wise, the good, fair forms, and hoary seers of ages past, all in one big grave. Okay, so one mighty sepulcher is what it says, with all the people that have died before, great and small, kings all the way down, right? So then he goes on to talk about, and I'm like line 36 or so now, 36, 37, one mighty sepulcher. Then he goes on to talk about all the beautiful things in nature. You've got the hills, the vales, the woods, the rivers, the oceans, all of those great and beautiful things in nature, those glorious sights in nature, are just beautiful decorations on the great tomb of man. They are literally like flowers that we place on a grave for in our way of paying respect to the dead. All the wonderful, beautiful sights of the world are basically just decorations on the great grave of man, that one mighty sepulcher. And then he switches gears. Everything in the heavens, the sun, the planets, the infinite host, the angels, all of those are looking down on us, and they see all of these things that happen to us as we come from the ground. We live, we die, we return to the ground again. In lines through line 57, really, he's talking about the millions of people that have already done this. They've already died and gone underground to their eternal sleep. And then he says, so shalt thou rest. All that breathe will share thy destiny. So you're going to die too. And guess what? So is everybody else. All that breathe are going to share that destiny. And life is going to continue to go on. The gay will laugh when thou art gone. The solemn brood of care plod on. And each one, as before, will chase his favorite phantom. Yet one day they're going to die too, right? All these shall leave their mirth. So it's a cycle. We're all going to die. Life is going to go on for those that are still living until they die and come and join us. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Okay? So the point is that we should not be afraid of death, because it is something that is going to happen to everyone. Instead, we should take comfort in the idea that this has been the way of the world since the world was formed. We're born, we live, we die, we go back into the earth and the next generation, and so on and so forth. And we should approach, it says, thou go not like the quarry slave at night scourged to his dungeon. Don't approach it in as a slave to his dungeon, but instead approach thy grave like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. Wrap a blanket around you and lie down to pleasant dreams of your eternal sleep. So just soothing those worries, alleviating those fears. Come into nature. The answers are all around you. It's a really powerful piece of poetry here, and a great example of that romantic, those romantic characteristics about the reverence of nature and the importance of nature in our daily lives.